New Year's Eve wrapped New York City in a restless kind of magic. The streets shimmered with reflected lights, and the cold air carried laughter, music, and the distant echo of fireworks waiting to be born. Emma stood on the Brooklyn Bridge, her breath fogging the air as she watched the skyline glow like a promise. She had arrived in the city 6 months ago with a single suitcase and 1,000 quiet hopes, but tonight, the noise around her only made her feel more alone. People rushed past in groups, counting down the seconds with friends and lovers. Emma tightened her scarf and stayed where she was, listening to the river below and the hum of the city that never truly slept. At the first stroke of midnight, fireworks exploded over Manhattan, painting the sky in red, gold, and white. Cheers rose from every direction. Emma closed her eyes as the final second passed and made a wish she had never spoken out loud before. She didn't wish for success or stability. She wished for connection, for someone who would understand her silences, who would choose her even when life grew complicated. She whispered the wish into the cold night, unsure if it would ever be heard. Across the city, Daniel stood alone on the rooftop of his apartment building in Manhattan. The party downstairs had grown too loud, too crowded, and too full of empty conversations. At 32, Daniel had everything people said should make him happy: a steady job, a decent apartment, and a future that looked safe on paper. Yet as fireworks lit the sky, he felt an ache he couldn't name. He watched couples hug and kiss on nearby rooftops, their joy sharp against his quiet loneliness. When the clock struck midnight, Daniel lifted his face to the sky. The explosions of color reflected in his eyes as he made his wish, not for change, but for truth. He wished to meet someone who would make the city feel less heavy, someone who would remind him that life could still surprise him. He exhaled slowly, almost embarrassed by the hope forming in his chest. Neither Emma nor Daniel knew that their wishes, made miles apart, were almost identical. The city pulsed beneath them, alive with millions of lives crossing and separating, yet something unseen had shifted. As the fireworks faded and the cheers softened into echoes, Emma opened her eyes and felt a strange calm settle over her. Daniel, too, felt lighter, as if the night had taken something from him and left behind quiet anticipation. They both turned away from the sky, unaware that the same dawn would soon greet them. In a city famous for missed connections, two strangers had sent the same wish into the universe at the exact same moment. And somewhere between midnight and morning, New York began arranging their paths to cross, silently, patiently, waiting for dawn to bring them together. Morning arrived softly over New York City, as if the night had finally exhaled. The streets were quieter than usual, layered with thin snow and scattered confetti from celebrations that had already become memories. Emma stepped out of her small apartment in Brooklyn just after sunrise, pulling her coat close as the cold kissed her cheeks. She hadn't slept much. Something about the night before lingered in her chest, a feeling not quite hope, not quite certainty, but close to both. She decided to walk instead of taking the subway, letting the city wake up around her. She crossed into Manhattan as the sky turned pale gold. Coffee shops flickered to life, and steam rose from sidewalk vents like ghosts fading into daylight. Emma followed the smell of fresh coffee into a small café near Central Park, the kind of place that felt untouched by rush or noise. Inside, warm light spilled over wooden tables and fogged windows. She ordered a simple black coffee and waited, rubbing her hands together for warmth. Moments later, Daniel pushed open the same door. His head throbbed lightly from too little sleep and too much thinking. He had left his apartment early, needing air and movement to quiet his thoughts. The wish he had made at midnight kept returning to him, uninvited but persistent. As he stepped inside the cafe, the warmth wrapped around him, and for the first time since the night before, he felt grounded. The barista called out an order and slid the wrong cup across the counter. Emma reached for it just as Daniel did. Their fingers brushed, and both of them froze for a brief second. Emma looked up, startled, then smiled apologetically. Daniel laughed, a soft, surprised sound. The moment was small, ordinary, yet it carried a strange weight, as if something important had just been placed gently between them. The cafe was crowded, and there were no empty tables left. Daniel gestured toward the chair across from Emma's table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. She hesitated only a moment before nodding. Conversation followed easily, without effort or expectation. They talked about the cold, the city, and how quiet New Year's morning felt compared to the night before. Emma mentioned moving to New York to start over. Daniel spoke about living there long enough to forget why he once loved it. Outside, snow drifted slowly past the windows, softening the city's sharp edges. Time moved differently inside the café. Emma noticed how comfortable she felt, how natural it was to sit across from someone who felt oddly familiar. Daniel felt it too, a calm he hadn't known he was missing. Neither of them spoke about wishes or fireworks. Yet as they finished their coffee, both sensed that this meeting was not random. Somewhere deep inside, they felt the echo of midnight stirring again, quietly reminding them that some beginnings don't arrive with noise or certainty. Some arrive gently, over coffee, on a cold New Year's morning, when two strangers sit down and unknowingly take the first step towards something more. The snow outside continued to fall softly, layering the city streets in a quiet white blanket that muffled the usual hum of New York. Inside the café, the warmth seemed to create a little bubble around Emma and Daniel. They lingered over their empty cups, neither wanting to break the delicate rhythm that had formed between them. Words flowed easily, and silences were comfortable. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months, while Daniel marveled at how effortless it was to share thoughts with someone he had only just met. Emma talked about her move to the city, how she had left behind her hometown in search of a fresh start. She described her apartment, the small rituals she had created to make it feel like home, and the dreams she kept in her heart. Daniel listened attentively, noticing the light in her eyes as she spoke, and feeling a rare warmth that had nothing to do with the café's heater. When it was Daniel's turn, he spoke about his life in Manhattan, the routines he had grown tired of, and the quiet longing he had carried for years. He admitted that despite having friends and a steady job, there had always been a sense of missing something, an emptiness he couldn't quite fill. Emma nodded knowingly, sensing a depth in his words that matched her own unspoken thoughts. Outside, the city moved in its usual hurried rhythm, but inside, time seemed suspended. Snowflakes tapped against the window, and the world beyond the glass felt distant. They shared small stories, favorite books, and even embarrassing childhood memories. Each revelation seemed to draw them closer, like two puzzle pieces recognizing a shape they had always been missing. At one point, Emma mentioned New Year's Eve. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "I made a wish at midnight," she admitted, glancing at Daniel. "It was silly, maybe. But I wished for someone who could really understand me." Daniel froze mid-sip, the words striking a chord deep within him. His heart skipped a beat. Slowly, he met her gaze, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I made the same wish," he said softly. "At midnight, I wished for the same thing, someone to see me, really see me." They stared at each other, a stunned silence filling the space between them. The coincidence felt too precise to be chance. Emma's heart raced, and Daniel felt a thrill of disbelief and wonder. It was as if the universe had quietly conspired overnight, weaving their separate lives into the same pattern. For a moment, neither spoke, letting the truth settle in. It wasn't just a meeting. It was something rarer, a collision of timing, hope, and quiet destiny. In the soft glow of the café and the gentle fall of snow outside, two strangers realized that the wish they had whispered into the night was no longer just a dream. It was unfolding before them, tangible and real, and the city that had felt so big and lonely suddenly seemed smaller, warmer, and full of possibility. By the time they left the café, the morning had melted into a bright, crisp day. Their steps fell in rhythm as they walked toward the park together, both aware that this meeting was only the beginning, and that the universe had given them a rare, extraordinary gift, each other. By mid-morning, New York City had fully awakened. Snow still clung to rooftops and sidewalks, but the sun sparkled on the icy streets, scattering light like tiny diamonds. Emma and Daniel walked side by side through Central Park, their breath rising in soft clouds. It was quiet in a way that felt almost intimate, the city's usual chaos softened by the lingering winter hush. Every step they took together seemed natural, effortless, as if the world had quietly rearranged itself to make room for this new connection. Emma laughed as she kicked at a patch of fresh snow, sending it scattering. "I can't believe we actually met like this," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "It feels, I don't know, like a story someone else would tell, not real life." Daniel smiled, glancing at her. "I know exactly what you mean. It's surreal. I've walked past thousands of people in this city and never felt a spark. But with you, it's like something just clicked." His words were honest, unguarded, and Emma felt a warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun. They found a quiet bench overlooking the lake, where the ice reflected the pale blue sky. For a while, they simply watched the world, letting conversation flow slowly between them. They spoke of hopes, fears, and the strange coincidences that had led them to this moment. Every laugh, every pause, every shared glance seemed to weave an invisible thread connecting them more tightly. Emma admitted that she had always been cautious, wary of people and city life alike. "I didn't expect to meet anyone here who truly understands," she said softly. Daniel nodded, feeling a mirror of his own unspoken thoughts. "I've been living here for years, yet never felt seen until now," he confessed. "It's like the city was waiting for the right moment, for the right person." The conversation shifted naturally to dreams for the future. Emma spoke of ambitions she had shelved and places she wanted to explore. Daniel shared ideas he had hesitated to chase alone. Neither felt pressure, only a growing excitement that they might pursue these things together, their paths no longer solitary. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the park in a golden glow, Emma realized how light she felt. The anxiety, the loneliness, and the weight she had carried for months seemed to melt away in Daniel's presence. Daniel felt it too, a sense of calm that had nothing to do with being in control, and everything to do with being exactly where he was meant to be. Eventually, they stood to leave. Numbers were exchanged, naturally, almost reluctantly, as if parting now felt like pausing a song that had just begun. They didn't make promises they couldn't keep, yet both knew that this new year was unlike any other. Two strangers, one midnight wish, and a single morning together had already begun to reshape their lives. As Emma watched Daniel walk away down the snow-dusted path, she smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. Daniel turned once, meeting her gaze, and knew this was only the beginning. The city around them, bustling and indifferent, held no power over the quiet magic that had unfolded between them. Sometimes, beginnings don't come with fireworks. Sometimes, they arrive gently, with shared coffee, a snowy morning, and the quiet courage to meet someone who had been wished for all along.